Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. And here we are, still on our porch answering your questions, because you guys filled up the inbox while I was busy at George Washington's Mount Vernon Distillery making apple brandy, as well as at Old Homestead Distillery, setting everything up for your pleasure in the future. As always, reach out to me, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com, YouTube comments down below, social media, and make sure that you follow Old Homestead Distillery on social media, Patoka Lake Marina, Patoka Lake Winery, Patoka Lake Brewery. That's all alcohol acres overall. So cool stuff coming, including classes in the future, guys. Check out thealchemistcabinet.com, pick up the books, all the things that you buy from me, support this channel, support my family, support what I do, the passion that I have to help you guys as home and professional distillers. So, question from Bob in Costa Rica. Bob, I hope you're doing well, man. I'll catch up with you on the phone very shortly. So, hi, Alan. Hope all is well. I have some pretty basic questions. Excuse me. I've come across conflicting information about what temperature water to use for sparging. Some sources say to use cold water, others say to use hot water. Many sources make no reference to either, thinking maybe it doesn't matter what temperature one uses. Can you shed any light on this apparent contradiction in process? My second question has to do with heads and tails in a following spirit run as it relates to small home batches. Some sources say putting heads and tails in the next run could be a good idea. Others say they never put heads in another run, and others say they do. Some with tails, some do, and some don't. I hope you can clear this up for me. Lastly, along the same line, are there different recommendations for the following run, depending if it is the same mash bill or a different mash bill? Thanks again for being there, and we are all waiting to video tour the new place. There will be videos of the new place coming very, very shortly. We are in the process of getting everything put together, lined out where we want it. There are some videos on my social media that you can see, some little short TikTok videos and stuff that I've done, but I will be doing a lot more videos in the future as we get things set up. I just want to make sure that everything is how I want it to be before we really, put the spotlight on the place, as it were. So, all right, let's get into your question. So, temperature for water to use for sparging. Honestly, I'm not a single malt guy, and I'm not a brewer in the traditional sense, Bob. So I don't do a lot of sparging. I have sparged in the past. I've pretty much always used hot water, or typically hot water. And my rationale behind that is because you're trying to wash the sugars out of the grain bed. You would tend to think that the hot water would be much more effective at expanding that grain and pushing that sugar out and making it leach from the field. But this might be a better question for brewers or guys that do single malt that don't run on the grain out there. This is something I don't have a lot of experience with, and I'm happy to admit that I don't know the answer to this question. So if anybody has an answer to Bob's question, please chime in down below. I'd be glad to hear it, and it'd teach me something as well, because it's something I don't know that much about, to be truthful and honest with you. So second question has to do with heads and tails in a following spirit run as it relates to small home batches. Some say putting heads and tails in the next run could be a good idea, and it goes on and on. All right, so this depends in a lot of ways. I will tell you what I do. So with double pot still distillation, if we're making a brown spirit, if we're making a whiskey that's going to be a brown spirit, the heads for me will go back into the stripping run up to 5 times. Heat cycling breaks down the methanol. It breaks down the acetaldehyde. It breaks down the ethyl acetate. The reason I stop at 5 is because after 5, I start to notice that I do get some off flavors that I don't necessarily want. On a brown whiskey run, the tails always go back into the doubling still for me. Most of your esters, most of your flavors, especially going into a barrel, are in those tails. They just need heat. They need heat processing. Remember, the alcohol itself does not carry any flavor at all. The water carries the flavor. You have more water in the tails than you do in the hearts, where you have more ethanol. Subsequently, all that water in the tails is full of flavor. It's just flavor that needs refined and reprocessed. This gives you a big, bold spirit that will hold up to a barrel over time and give you wonderful mouthfeel with double pot still distillation. This is true of almost all traditional Charentes style double pot still distillations in the world, including cognac and a lot of times in Scotland as well. There are fucking bugs everywhere out here, guys. I apologize. It's unseasonably warm in Indiana already, so just being bombarded by insects constantly. Now, if I'm making a brown apple brandy or a grape brandy, I never rerun heads. I cut heads and throw them out because they give off flavors that I don't want. They also give some aromas that can go heavily in the direction of like overripe jam, and they will give you a false sense, in my opinion, of where you need to make your heads cut on the next run. But I always run the tails. On white spirits, I don't ever put the heads back in. I don't need to. I'm going for a clean spirit. I'm not looking for long-term esterification from a barrel and from oxidization and that sort of stuff with the white spirit. Heads never go back in, but I almost always put the tails back in. If I'm running a moonshine with a thumper, I will typically always put the tails back in and never put the heads back in. So as you can see, there's different methods, different tools in the toolbox, as it were, for what you're trying to do versus what you're not trying to do. What kind of flavor are you trying to build? Are you trying to build flavor right off of the still that you want to keep, or flavor right off the still that you want to change into something else over time in the barrel? And you have to really have a good understanding of how a barrel will mature over time with the existing flavors that you are putting into it, with the understanding the chemical compounds that are going into that barrel are not at all the same chemical compounds that will come out of that barrel in a few years. That's the art of alchemy. So you also say here, let's see, along that same line, are there different recommendations for the following run depending if it's the same mash bill or a different mash bill? I guess that depends on the person and what they're trying to do on a home level. Now, on a professional level, you would never take the tails from, say, a high rye bourbon and put them into a wheated bourbon run, because now you've skewed the mash bill, right? Especially if you're going to declare the mash bill on the label. TTB wants that to be as clear as possible. On a home level, maybe that doesn't matter to you that much. I know a lot of guys build up their tails and then just run those either as a, Queen's run of all tails of one type, or just save their tails and, get what they can out of it as sort of a mixed run, or even run it up to neutral and use that as neutral spirit. So that really depends on the distiller and what they want to do, what their aim is, what their goal is, how clean and how pure they want to be about each product that they're making in particular. So great question, though, Bob. As always, you usually do send in some really good ones, and there might be another one here from you. I've got to look through my papers here and see what we got. So give me a second. Okay, so from Bob. I've been wondering about the process of macerating brandy after a spirit run. I know there are suggestions for the ideal ABV for barreling. Is there a preference ABV for macerating brandy after a spirit run? Is there some metric for how much fruit to use for the process and how long to leave the fruit soaking in the spirit? Is it okay to put macerated spirit into a barrel or on staves? Thank you again for sharing your knowledge with us. So again, this is going to depend on what you're doing. Typically, you'll see these happen at higher proofs. Usually it's still proof most often. And that's probably, in my opinion, the best place to pull the volatility from. There's a lot of water already in fruit, and so you're not really after the water, you're after the things that aren't water, right? The flavors that aren't water. So let's see, another suggestions for ideal ABV for barreling. Is there preferred ABV for macerating after spirit run? For me, I do the high proof. That's really about it. Now, there are exceptions. So blackberries and raspberries, for example, the seeds are very phenolic. So if you do those at high proof, you're going to pull a lot of that phenolic flavor, and that's not necessarily something that people enjoy. Same is also true of strawberries. So I probably would go maybe closer to 100 proof on things like that. But you got to remember, you're going to be dropping your ABV when you're macerating those because there's so much water in them. So is there some metric for how much fruit to use for the process and how long to leave the fruit soaking in the spirit? For me, I've always thought the more the better, right? Or to at the very least, take a portion of my alcohol that I might blend with other alcohol that might not be macerated and put as much fruit in there as what I possibly can, extract as much flavor as I possibly can, and then press the alcohol off of that fruit when I'm done to mix with my other spirits. But I would say as much as you can possibly get in there. Is it okay to put macerated spirit into a barrel or on staves? Absolutely. Why not, right? I mean, you're just modifying flavors. You're creating flavor bridges and contrast and, coloring outside the lines a little bit. But really, if you think about flavor in terms of color, that's what you're doing, right? If you were a painter, would you want to Would you want to limit yourself to only this one set of colors? Well, maybe for certain projects that's what you do, but if you want the widest possible berth of outcome and creative process possible, you want as many of the colors as possible. So why not also use wood to accomplish the same thing alongside the fruit or the various other things that you might macerate? I think that is always a worthwhile thing. So, all right, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. And as always, support me, thealchemistcabinet.com. Send me your questions, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com, YouTube comments below, social media, and we will catch up with you soon and be doing a tour from Old Homestead Distillery. Love y'all. Later.